Welcome to this explainer. Today we are decoding a really fascinating academic study out of Pakistan about a phenomenon pretty much all of us have experienced, but honestly we usually just blame ourselves for it. We're looking at exactly why having an absolutely impossible workload actually triggers us to delay our tasks instead of, crushing them. It's a deeply frustrating cycle and we're calling it the procrastination paradox.
So let me ask you a question. Have you ever stared at a completely impossible deadline, felt totally overwhelmed by the sheer mountain of work, and decided to reorganize your desk instead? Or maybe you just suddenly felt this overwhelming urge to deep clean your entire kitchen. On the surface, it makes absolutely no logical sense. You have way too much to do, so why are you doing exactly nothing? Well, as we're going to see, the research shows that this reaction actually makes perfect psychological sense.
Here's a quick look at what we'll be covering today. We've got the overload epidemic, the psychology of procrastination, testing the theory, the surprising results, and finally, fixing the workplace.
Section 1. The overload epidemic.
Let's dive right in by looking at the private education sector, which is honestly an absolute pressure cooker for analyzing work overload. Employees, especially teachers, who have been grappling with these massive, rapid shifts to hybrid and online teaching recently, are facing a truly crushing combination of long hours, scarce resources, and sky-high expectations. They are dealing with intense stress, the constant pressure to multitask, and profound digital fatigue. And when daily demands radically outpace the resources you're given, the human system just starts to break down.
Section 2. The psychology of procrastination.
To really understand why this kind of systemic overload makes us avoid work entirely, we have to look at the conservation of resources theory, or COR. This is essentially the theoretical anchor of the whole study. Think of core theory as treating your human energy exactly like a smartphone battery. When your task demands are way too high and your internal resources are drained, your brain literally enters a defensive power-saving mode. It actively procrastinates to conserve whatever little energy, time, and cognitive capacity you happen to have left. So you aren't just slacking off. Biologically speaking, you are actively trying to protect your inner resources from total depletion.
And this triggers what we can call a massive resource clash. On one side of the scale, you've got relentless work demands, your overloaded tasks, the intense pressure to multitask, those inevitable super tight deadlines. But on the other side, you have your available resources. This is your cognitive reserve, your physical energy, the flexibility of your working conditions. When those overwhelming demands vastly outweigh your available resources, a violent clash occurs that leaves you totally exhausted and incredibly prone to just avoiding your tasks altogether.
Section 3. Testing the theory.
Now, to move this from just theory into reality, researchers conducted a huge cross-sectional survey in South Asia. They collected highly detailed survey data from exactly 409 academic staff members. These were real individuals actively navigating the incredibly high-pressure environment of Pakistan's private educational institutions, and the researchers used a robust multi-stage cluster sampling designed to get this data.
And keep in mind, these weren't just abstract data points floating in a vacuum. These were highly educated, real professionals. Almost 75% were teachers, working right in the trenches alongside principals and administrators. The sample was mostly female and highly educated. Over half held master's degrees. Plus, they were spread across 7 culturally and geographically diverse regions in Pakistan, from Punjab all the way to Balochistan. To get a crystal clear picture, the researchers had them rate their daily experiences with acute workload stress.
Section 4. The surprising results.
Okay, here's where the researchers unveiled a genuinely fascinating cause and effect chain. The first domino falls right here. The data definitively proves that an excessive workload is a direct trigger for procrastination. The numbers show a massive, completely undeniable correlation. Heavier workloads quite literally force employees to delay tasks to protect their drained physical and mental reserves. Basically, when you give an employee far too much to do, you aren't getting more output. You are actively generating task avoidance.
And then the second domino falls. Procrastination acts as this highly destructive middleman. The data revealed a severe negative impact, showing that it transforms a heavy workload into a massive drop in overall job performance. Think about it. Procrastinators naturally start prioritizing non-work activities just to cope with the stress. That leads to rushed work at the last minute, massive mistakes, and essentially shattered workplace effectiveness.
But wait, what if management steps in to help? Like, can a supportive boss save the day? This introduces something called perceived organizational support, or POS. It's essentially an employee's impression that their institution genuinely appreciates their contributions, values their well-being, and actually has their back. It sounds like the absolute perfect cure for burnout, right?
Well, this brings us to a pretty stunning realization and a major plot twist in the data. On one hand, feeling supported by your organization is absolutely a massive booster for your overall performance. But on the other hand, it completely fails to stop procrastination. The impact was statistically zero. What this means is that while support makes you a better employee in general, it completely fails to cure your procrastination habit once your battery is already totally dead. Because procrastination is a deeply personal, self-regulatory failure in that specific moment. All the organizational cheerleading in the world just cannot force a drained brain to suddenly start a complex task.
Section 5. Fixing the workplace.
So, if cheerleading doesn't work on an overloaded employee, what actually does? How do administrators and policymakers take this data and build a healthier, more productive environment? The actionable playbook here requires a very specific order of operations. Actually, you can't start with emotional support. Step 1 has to be balancing the workload. You have to actively align assignments with actual roles to prevent those sudden, paralyzing spikes in work. Then, Step 2. Add tangible resources. You've got to improve teacher-student ratios and provide effective tools so the work can literally get done. You have to put those physical boundaries in place first. And only then, Step 3, foster support. Train your leaders to recognize stress signals, run effective time management workshops. You layer on the emotional and organizational support to truly prevent burnout, but it only works if that baseline workload is mathematically manageable.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to take a second to reflect on your own daily grind and the systems around you. Look at your task list and the resources you're actually given to complete it. Ask yourself, is your organization setting you up to succeed by balancing your demands? Or are they simply overloading your battery until you naturally shut down and procrastinate? The data is crystal clear here. Structural overload requires structural solutions. Thanks so much for joining me to decode this fascinating behavioral paradox.